We've been talking a lot about this topic and the different ways that people are trying to do this. So what do banks have to do with it? How are they helping?
Right, because it wouldn't immediately come to mind, I think, that your bank could actually help you out with this property
you go
taxes.
to your accountant,
right.
go to your local tax office, I guess.
Exactly, and just to be sure, the banks are saying that they're not giving you tax advice. But once you have determined with your accountant or with your tax lawyer that it would be beneficial for you to go ahead and try to prepay your 2018 property taxes earlier, then they'll help you out. And so it's essentially these, anyone who's got a mortgage with a bank, typically they'll have an escrow account where, the bank is actually the one who is paying directly to the tax assessor your property taxes. So what's happening here is Bank of America, SunTrust, to some extent PNC, so some of these really large banks are, helping these customers out to prepay these taxes. Once these banks can get a bill from the local authorities, then they will go ahead and prepay this. Usually that's done in the form of a loan, though. You're going to be taking out a small loan with the bank, and they'll go ahead then and pay those taxes. You'll pay them back as you normally would, sort of month to month in that escrow account.
Yeah, so does this mean that they're actually opening up new lines of credit with new specific products?
No, they're mostly not actually offering new products for this. Like, they're not doing a personal loan essentially for this. You have to, in Bank of America's case, for example, which is one of the biggest banks that we're talking about here, they will do it more or less if you're a client of their wealth management unit, so Merrill Lynch or US Trust. They'll give you this loan on other assets that you've got with them. So if you have stocks, you've got bonds with them, but you have this big clunky account with a lot of your wealth managed by them already, they will actually lend to you for this purpose against those assets. There is, though, a small contingency of people who maybe aren't clients of Merrill Lynch or US Trust who can also take part of the benefit, but you have to have something like a home equity line of credit, and that's what is really being borrowed against for this purpose.
So it sounds like this could, at least at the margins, be an income generating tool for the banks, right? Because they're going to charge interest on this stuff.
Yes. And now I'm not sure that every single bank will actually do that. It would behoove them, though, to do this. And we did ask about, what those rates might be, but it really is more dependent, if you're a Merrill Lynch client, for example, when you get these different types of loans, whether it's a margin loan, whatever you're going to use it for, different tiers of clients get different rates. And this is really just the same thing there. But you're right, Julie, it is definitely a small moneymaker for the banks. But I think they would view it more as a service.
A service, sure.
Exactly.
And also just because it doesn't necessarily make sense for every one of their customers, depending on whether they itemize deductions and basically on how they file their taxes.
Right. If you're not itemizing, it probably doesn't make sense for you, but the banks are definitely hesitating to be the ones giving you that tax advice. I think for the most part, though, if you're going to be itemizing, then this would be beneficial since you'll have that cap next year where you won't be able to take that same deduction.
I wonder, too, have the banks, it seems like everyone had to staff up this last week of the year. I mean, typically, I would imagine this is a week a lot of people have off.
It should have been a little bit more quiet, right?
I mean, accountants presumably are working when they wouldn't normally be doing so. And I would imagine the same is true of these bank employees who would maybe have tried to take off.
Also for Laura trying to get this right.
Busy last 2 weeks of the year. Exactly, all across the board. And that's true, Julie. And I think, too, also for the local tax offices, because the banks, for the most part, can't process these transactions without some kind of actual bill, some invoice indicating what you're going to pay for 2018. So what the banks have said is, look, Julie, if you want to do this with us, great, but you need to call Sherry at the tax assessment office to get that invoice for us to look at first. So it's even causing, the localities to have to do a lot more work.